Okay, so good morning, everyone. So for today, we're going to discuss lesson 8, no? Developing future architecture views. So the creation of a future perspective of the enterprise architecture within the context of a documentation structure and implementation strategy. So the enterprise values that the future views of the EA because they encompass one or more possible business and technology operating scenarios, hence facilitating planning and decision making. So in response to internal and external forces, these future operational scenarios are built on assumptions of competence and strategies for successful performance. Future views artifacts are created utilizing the planning assumptions outlined in the scenarios, as well as the same documentation and modeling methodologies that were used to create the existing views artifacts. No? And this enable future view artifact to be closely tied to existing view artifacts at each level of the framework. So that possible and planned changes are visible and various sorts of or combinations of modifications can be mode driven, no? Educational objectives understand the relationship between future perspectives, no? And the EA documentation framework. We could able to understand the relationship between future perspective and EA implementation approach, and we could able to understand with this topic on how the scenario planning facilities the formation of future perspective and the view of future perspective of enterprise architecture components and artifacts. So the future perspective of the EA describe the IT resources that will be operational in the operating environment some years from now, and this is also known as the to be no view of the enterprise architecture as opposed to the as is, no. So depending on the degree of the prior enterprise architecture planning in the organization, future IT resources may not be linked, no, with the strategic goals and business services of the firm. So if minimal enterprise architecture planning has happened, there may be a substantial amount of functions duplication, and the enterprise architecture's perspective view should demonstrate how this redundancy will be avoided. Similarity in residential architecture, let's say, for example, having future enterprise architecture perspectives is like to having a complete set of house plans for renovation. It gives an authoritative resource for the architect and homeowner to use while considering modification to the residence. Now, so as what I presented earlier, no, the EA provide documentation of identification, identified modifications, so strategic objectives, no, business services, information flows, support application and network resources, as I presented earlier. No, so wait. I'll just want to show you a video presentation. Then later on, I will sum up this presentation. If you have an additional input, not to not hesitate to post in our chat box.
So, Michael, do you want to talk more about it?
Just a little bit. I think it was actually the very typical roadmap I've seen where they've got diamonds and triangles and they run an effort along those and show you the milestones, and they call it a roadmap, but it's really just a master schedule for all their initiatives.
Okay. Does anybody else want to comment on this?
There are different types of roadmaps. Strategic roadmaps, product roadmaps, project roadmaps, right? So they all kind of cover different levels, right?
Mm-hmm.
They do, but some of the project roadmaps are actually probably more like IMSs, but they happen to label them a roadmap. A roadmap should show you better the destination, more so than the explicit path, and that's kind of what I'm getting at, the exact path to get there.
That's good. So,
Meghna, this is Vishal.
sorry, go ahead.
The roadmap.
Vishal.
So one thing when we look at from all this perspective, the roadmap is basically needs two things. Like, okay, we need the beginning of the journey, that is like, okay, your current thing, which is a baseline thing, and you need a target, okay, or a future state. So usually the future state is like, okay, can be termed as a vision. So how do we get from there to the vision is the part. If we define it in the business outcome terms, it's a business roadmap. If we define it in the terms of technology, okay, it becomes a project or a technology roadmap. That's how we use it at my place.
Very good. So the advantage, the great advantage, sorry, was there anybody else? Okay, the great advantage of roadmaps in aiding the EA EA architects with planning them, but they make for an excellent communications tool to garner, execute, and to disseminate the plan out to the entire organization. And do you want to be a little fast on this one?
Yeah, I mean, that's just, I guess, the most common way I see roadmaps within my organization, right? They kind of use them as a communications tool as well as a planning tool.
That's good. Yeah, I wrote the discussion, even Pinky had mentioned about communication. So, talk anything about it? Okay, I set up or okay. So, current to future state. We generally attacking low-hanging fruit early in the EA management plan to demonstrate value sooner than later, which efforts continued buy-in by the stakeholders and executive sponsorship. Roadmaps use change efforts. The transition to future EA should align business and IT. So what map is the way it kind of tells you everything, or is it something which is not clear? Or what else would you say that the roadmap could help you get to the future state? Anybody?
Patrick makes a great point, and that successes can sometimes garner better support later on. No successes doesn't really, build that well. Now, there's a conflict here. If you get the early success, you really, I assume, in his roadmaps, you've still got the ultimate future EA that moves business and how IT is supporting it closer together, like Jennifer says.
Mm-hmm. Very good. So I think the roadmap team can take over. John, do you want me to transfer it to you?
Yes, that'd be great. Thanks, Meghna.
Okay.
All right. Can everyone see that? All right, thank you. Thanks, you.
Yes.
All right, I think we're going to start off with Clay.
Yeah, okay. So we're all set. Okay, so please feel free to ask questions, raise your hand, type in the chat, and we'll try and get to you. So my name's Clay Prue, and on behalf of the EA 871 Module 18, we are pleased to have this opportunity to present the topic of roadmaps to you. Allow me to introduce the team in tonight's agenda. So my name's Clay, and I'm going to be reviewing the concepts of roadmaps. Next is Jennifer Faleras. We'll cover when and why organizations would want to create a roadmap. Michael Mark will outline the strategies for success. So with that, let's begin our roadmap journey. So this is what we learned from our readings. We found a common theme that content simplicity and a unifying message was what roadmaps really are, and creating them is almost like a blending of disciplines that form some kind of an art form. So go to the next slide. Next slide, sorry. Okay, here we go. So Blanton and McGregor defined a roadmap as a graphical representation used to illustrate.
Hey, Clay, you're fading in and out for some reason.
Sorry, how's this? Is that better?
That's good, right there.
Okay, so they're used to illustrate milestones and deliverables required to manage change over a period of time. How's that? Is that better?
Going good.
Still wobbly, okay. Sorry about that. Okay, so when I broke that definition down into simpler ideas, I found that roadmaps tell stories of evolution while pointing a path to the future. So why would you want to use like a pictorial representation over like an email or maybe even a podcast? And so certainly those forms of communication can communicate the basic ideas of what's expected and then timelines. But our team learned that roadmaps offer immediate recognition of complex and ambiguous views.
Okay. So to continue the discussion, no? So the creation of the future enterprise architecture perspective is essential, no, to an organization since it facilitates resource planning and decision making. So in addition, by completing the documentation of the future EA at all levels of the framework, a perspective of the enterprise prospective future develops, revealing no changes in priorities, procedures, and resources. And this facilitates enterprise-wide communication regarding these anticipated changes. Each level of the future EAR framework is documented with artifacts, no, indicating which components have been cleared for execution and which are still in the ideation or planning phase. No? New or updated strategic goals and initiative, business services, information flows, systems, supports applications, and networks are among the potential alteration to existing enterprise architecture components. Initiative in the first phases of consideration can be excluded from subsequent views, no, unless they have solid support from sponsor, no, compelling business reasons, and feasible technological solutions. And this prevents future enterprise architecture perspective from becoming cluttered with initiatives and updates that have little possibility of being adopted and will, no, over time diminish the enterprise architecture's perceived value as an authoritative planning and decision-making resource. No? In a specialized area of the enterprise architecture management plan, candidate initiatives are more thoroughly outlined, of course, in some discussions. Now, constructing, let's say, yung tinatawag nating concept of operation or yung CONOPS scenario. No? CONOPS or concept of operation scenarios have been used for millennia as a military planning tool. Similarly, the ability to visualize multiple potential courses of action is essential, no, to winning a variety of recreational activities. Using chess as an example, part of what makes a chess master is anticipating how the opportunity may react to your movements at the highest levels of play. No, one must be able to consider multiple possible movements and counter moves that establish a dynamic balance between acting and responding. Similarly, a business should continuously evaluate its internal and external operating environments, no? And make tactical and strategic decisions in order to avert catastrophic scenarios and optimize mission success concurrently. Because large corporation is the public and private sector, no? And they have employed future scenarios for planning purposes for a number of years. And future scenarios can contribute to the development of enterprise architecture future vision by identifying a variety of enterprise operating options and planning assumptions. So, creating a multiple scenarios that represent a variety of favorable and unfavorable operational setting enables an organization to anticipate its likely responses, yung defensive measure na tinatawag natin, no? And initiative or yung offensive moves, no? It also aids, no, in identifying the required resources and competencies for these responses or initiatives. Again, the CONOPS, no, or ang sinasabi ko kanina na concept of operations, no, or CONOPS scenarios, no, are used to document both the current operating environment and a variety of conceivable future operating environments, and can be fairly extensive. In determining which potential CONOPS scenario to capture, businesses should consider a variety of internal and external consideration by identified in the SWOT analysis. Of course, yung ating strength, weaknesses, opportunities, and trends, no? Because it is impossible to forecast, no, which internal and external factors will come into play to create a favorable or unfavorable operating environment. It is advantageous for a business to have a variety of future scenarios, no? And one of the most efficient forms for creating a condensed version of CONOPS scenario that is simple to disseminate and implement thoroughly to the organization. And this type scenario is presented in the style of short story recounted through the eyes of a central character whose involvement in the future events reveals the internal and external drivers of the business and technologies operating environment at the moment, no? Then these drivers are tied to specific planning assumptions in the three change-related domains. Ano yun? Siyempre, andyan yung processes, no? People and technology. Because stories are easy to recall and the highlighting of planning assumptions indicate the required resources and capabilities if the scenario is realized. Then scenarios do not replace the enterprise requirement, no, for detailed strategic plans. Rather, they serve the enterprise's requirement for detailed strategic plans rather than they serve to condense and animate the substance of numerous courses of actions called for the strategic plan, thereby making them more remembered, no? And actually, there are certain available scenario. Let's say, for example, no, in some aspect, no, of the future enterprise architecture. So, a while ago, no, I already presented the current architecture and the possible future architecture. Let's say, for example, in the current architecture, we have goals and initiative, products and services, data and information, system and applications, and network and infrastructure. For the architecture management plan, we have, of course, the updated strategic goals initiative, improve business products and services, enhance data and information flows, integrated systems and application, and we need to optimize, no, networks and infrastructure. So, in the planning assumption, we need to have, of course, let's say, for example, a different planning strategic scenario, especially during the management, knowledge management review. So, most commonly, no, the strategic level in enterprise architecture artifacts, no, as I mentioned, the EA components is the strategic plan. for the e-commerce or for e-commerce for business or e-government plan for the government agency, no? And we have, of course, EE artifacts like, say, strategic plan, SWOT analysis, concept operation scenario, concept of operations diagram, and the balance scorecard. No? So, in enterprise architecture, no, the EA components and artifacts at the strategic level of the EA framework serve to articulate the general direction and priorities that the enterprise intends to take along with the goals. So initiatives and measures that define success. No? The e-business or e-government plan is then serve to provide more detailed description of how IT initiative will support enterprise's strategic plan with a focus on strategic goals and key business services. So updated plans should be actually published every few years to reflect the changes in direction and priorities that the enterprise intend to take. So the future view of these plans can serve as draft documents where potential changes that have executive sponsorship are recorded until the official publication of the new plans. Because the future view of the enterprise architecture component should link the future view of the related EA artifacts such as strategic goals, scenarios, initiatives, and performance measures. No? So, when we say strategic scenarios, no, it can be added or deleted from the strategic plan's future view in response to changes in the internal and external operating environment. So, to promote comparison, no, and analysis, potential future scenarios should be documented in the same way that the current scenario is documented at the same time as an integrated narrative and set of high-level planning assumptions regarding enterprise priorities, performance, resources, and risk. For strategic goals, well, the current view of information technology related strategic goals represent with high level, no, of enterprise architecture artifacts that are documented in the enterprise current strategic plan. The future view of the EA artifacts represent changes to those goals, or let's say new goals that are not yet formally adopted and published as part of the plan. Because the new strategic goals, no, also serve to direct the development of future operation scenario or operating scenarios, no, which should capture the priorities and direction of those new goals. No? So, for the strategic initiative, the current view of IT-related strategic initiative serves to create an awareness and appreciation, of course, of the role that IT plays in supporting key business and administrative processes throughout the entire or enterprises. No? It also supports high-level resource planning, also known as capital planning and investment control, or yung CPIC process. No? And the future view of IT-related strategic initiative is intended to show the changes that are being planned to existing initiative as well as new initiatives that will be introduced in coming years. And this is especially valuable, no, to enterprise that have highly structured planning and budget processes. Okay, wait for a while. Okay, so as what I mentioned earlier, no, about the our discussions, no. So we done already, no, discussing about the strategic scenarios, strategic goals, strategic initiative. Right now, we're going to have the performance measure, no. Changes to strategic goals and initiatives in the future views will require new or modified outcome and output measure of success. No, the business level enterprise architecture artifacts future view, of course, as I mentioned earlier, we have the EA components, the supply chain, the business services, and the IT capital planning portfolio. Under enterprise artifacts, EA artifacts, no, business plan, node connectivity diagram. Now we have also what we call swim lane process diagram, business process or service model, and business process product matrix. No, it use case narrative and diagram, investment business case. So enterprise continually change their business services in response to a number of influencing factors, including new customers' requirements, so different competitive strategies, new technologies, and changes in resource availability. And these factors, no, also known as drivers, no, are documented at both the strategic level and the business level of the enterprise architecture 3 framework. So the documentation of drivers at the strategic level open centers of those influencing factors that originate in the external operating environment, while the documentation of business level drivers often focus on the influencing factors that originate in the internal operating environment. No, so the EA components at the business level may extend beyond the external operating environment, like say supply chain, no, involving external suppliers, but they are fundamentally internal management process. So future views of related EE artifacts primarily reflect approved changes to this business services and associated implementation activities. There are 4 general types of changes to business services that occur. Number 1, the introduction of a completely new processes. No? Number 2, elimination of an existing processes. Number 3, major re-engineering of an existing processes. And number 4, minor improvement of an existing process. Effective management at the business level requires that these changes be coordinated so that the performance of the enterprise does not decline. No? Therefore, reviews of existing business services should be performed periodically by line of business managers to identify those which may be obsolete, no, duplicative, or not attending sufficient value to the achievement of strategic goals. No, resulting decisions to eliminate or change existing processes or add new processes are what get documented in the future view, no, of business level EA components and artifacts. No. So, under process documentation, similar to the approach to documenting future views at the strategic level of the EA3, no, framework, only those potential changes to business services that have executed sponsorship should be documented at the business level. And this maintains value in the future view and promotes the use of the information for planning and decision making. Because documenting approved changes to the business services helps to maintain upward alignment in the EA3 framework with strategic goals and initiative. It also promotes downward, no? Downward alignment in the EA3 framework to ensure that EA components and artifacts at the lower 3 levels are properly adjusted to best support the anticipated process changes. Now, the enterprise should be consistent in how current and future business processes are documented. No, so another is the project plans. No, the project management plan is a living document that promotes proven and standardized approaches to implementing new or upgraded IT resources. So the current view of the PMP or the project management plan is developed in the requirements planning stage of the project lifecycle, with updates being made as changes in requirement solutions or resource occur. A future view of PMP may not be needed with certain EA components. Develop approaches, also known as system analysis and design methods, no, that promote the development of the entire system capability in one effort. So, I think familiar naman tayo sa waterfall or rapid application development methods. However, those system analysis design method approaches that promote the incremental o yung phase na tinatawag natin, di ba? May initial planning phase and so on. However, or evolutionary or yung spiral na ginagamit natin, develop an enterprise architecture components may benefit from having a future view of PMP or project management plan to show the implementation of system modules that are envisioned at some future time. So the phase implementation of the large ERP projects with several modules would be an example of we're having both a current and future views of the project management plan would be beneficial. PMP are maintained on system throughout the life cycle until the system is disposed. No. during our system analysis and design in undergraduate program, or even in project management, actually, no, we have a business cases. No, the investment business case is the part of the project management plan that documents the value of the investment to the enterprise. So the business case is unique in that it ties directly. Jassel. Okay. So as what I mentioned earlier, no, the business case is unique in that it ties directly to the enterprise budget and financial planning process, and as such usually requires a review at least annually. So the initial approval of the business case center on the identification of benefits that exceed cost, no, both qualitative and quantitative. No, approval also focuses on other determination that the rate of return of the capital investment, or yung tinatawag nating ROI, meets meaningful, measurable targets established by the enterprise, such that another use of those funds is not warranted. No, yung opportunity cost na tinatawag natin, especially during our SWOT analysis. No, and it is also actually given in benefits, ano yan, cost and benefits analysis during system analysis and design. No? So the business case should then be reviewed annually, no, to determine if sufficient benefits continue to be generated to merit continued investment. If they are not, the investment should be canceled or modified such that suffering ongoing value is created. No? And we need to provide a business case development and evaluation as part of the IT capital planning process. No? So, the information levels and the enterprise architecture artifacts, yung future view, no? For the AA components, we have knowledge warehouses, information system, and databases. For the enterprise architecture artifacts, this will be the information level AA artifacts na for future view, no? For the AA artifacts, we have knowledge management plan, information exchange matrix, object state transition diagram, object state transitions diagram, object event sequence, no? Diagram, logical data model, physical data model, activity entity, no? Yung CRUD na tinatawag natin, matrix, no? And the data dictionary or the object library. So futures of the enterprise architecture components and artifacts at the information level of the EA3 framework reflect, no, changes that are anticipated in the collections and flows of information that are needed to support changes in business services. No, yung tinatawag nating upward alignment, no? Or changes that are anticipated at the system services levels, at the technology infrastructures levels at the EA3 framework. When it comes to data models, no, traditional views of data models that show structure. Siyempre, aware naman tayo lahat sa entity relationship diagrams and process flow. Yun yung data flow diagrams. No? ERD focus most commonly, let's say, 1:1, many to many, many to one, one to many, and so on. But when it comes to data flow diagram, we are referring to the, of course, the flow lines, no? The data store, no? And the process itself. No, it can be developed to show the future changes, either the separate documents or through the use of special notations that can be integrated into current views. Let's say, for example, the use of dash line in the symbols to show future data entities, no, flows rather, no, and stores, no, whichever approach is taken, the important idea is to provide a future view or data structure and process in a way that it is directly comparable to the current view, as that areas of change can be easily identified. Another traditional data modeling, actually artifact, that mirrors the development of the future view in the activity or entity matrix, also called yung CRUD matrix na sinasabi ko kanina. This matrix maps activities occurring at the IT system boundary to the data entities that mirrors the development of future view, no, as I mentioned. And of course, this matrix maps activities occurring the IT system boundary to the data entities that are affected. And this mapping enables the data analyst and enterprise architect to see where and how data is created. No? Nandyan yung CRUD. Ano yung CRUD? read, updated, or deleted by identifying who in the enterprise is responsible for the activity, and the logical owner of the data and the process that transform the data can also be identified. Having current views of the CRUD matrix and knowledge of future changes in the business services enable the development of a future view of the CRUD matrix, which identifies potential changes in the ownership of data and which may lead the discussion of changes in data standards and formats. So IT system consolidations, upgrade, or replacement activities that seek to improve the efficiency of data handling or increase the cost effectiveness of the new system will benefit from a detailed analysis of current and future views of the CRUD matrix. So, for the object-oriented data and system models, no, object-oriented views of future system activities, di ba sa ating mga diagrams, meron tayong tinatawag na use cases. No? Yan po ay under ng object-oriented data and system models. No? This data process or structure, yung class and object diagrams natin, yung data transmission natin, transformation, yung di ba meron tayong tinatawag na state transmission diagrams. And we have also sequence diagrams, yung information flows. No? It should be developed in the same way that the current views of this same EA artifacts were developed so that an easy identification or of changes can be made. And one of the most powerful reasons for adopting an object-oriented approach to data modeling and IT system analysis and design is that objects can be modified with a minimal effort to reflect changes in requirements for use in different scenarios. So object reuse lowers the cost of the system upgrade projects and support the use of modular applications that are object-based, no? Pwedeng Java applications, no? Developing future views of how information in the firm produce better logical and physical data models, promote application interoperability, and support plug-and-play EA components that are based on open standards of particular product line. No? So we have, of course, the data dictionary. No? Aware naman tayo sa data dictionary. So data dictionary provides taxonomies and standard formats for the data entities that are data dictionary or used in enterprise various IT system. So data dictionaries do not store actual data. They just provide a list of entities, attributes, data field, formats, and standards. And these standards help to promote system interoperability and the consolidation of databases. So the future view of data dictionary would show the changes in the data standards and formats that are anticipated to be needed as the result of the system application database changes. We have the object libraries are similar in concept except that they stored both the format standards and the actual modules of code that constitute an object. Since one of the basic features of object is encapsulation, pag sinabi natin encapsulation, no, protection of parts of the code module from alteration. Yun ang ibig sabihin sa encapsulation. The object library can store distinct objects, just a book rests independently on the shelf among other books until pulled off the shelf and checked out of the library. So various versions of an object can be separately stored for use in different systems and application. Let's say, for example, no, an invoice object that provides different types of invoices that are custom tailored for different product lines. No? So for the system services level of EA artifacts future view, for the EA components, we have software applications, no? Web services, service bus and middleware. No? We have enterprise resource planning solutions, no? Operating system. For the EA artifacts, we have, of course, a system interface diagram, system communication diagram, system interface matrix, system data flow diagram, system operations matrix, system data exchange matrix, system performance matrix, system evolution diagram, and web application diagram. I don't know kung ano yung mga familiar kayo sa mga nabanggit kong matrix at diagram, because the system services level of the EA3 framework is organized around integrated plug-and-play components that are based open standards and reusable object of code that underlie and enable a component-based and services-oriented approach to EA, as is promoted in the EA3 framework. Now, various EA artifacts are used to document the future components that are systems services level, including program code and technical documentation on release and upgrades, interface diagram, and standards. Under the application interface description, a description of application software programs and their interfaces in the future view provide an understanding of what will change from what is currently in operation, as well as what new functional capabilities will have to be integrated. Because application programs, interface, yung API na ginagamit sa mga programming are feature of most commercial software programs and are where our design interface points in the programming code are located. Because these APIs define the extent of interoperability and may include open standards if maximum integration with a wide variety of other products is desired by the vendor. Conversely, APIs may be proprietary and limit interoperability to products from a specific vendor. Yung interfaces between modules of an ERP products, because the EA artifacts at this level are the technical description of APIs and list of the API standard. Kanina, API or enterprise or application interface description. How about the aid, yung ating application interface diagrams, interface diagram in the future view shows the changes to existing system service and application interface points. So these interface points are where information exchanges occur and infer connectivity, which is shown on of course in technology infrastructure level of the enterprise architecture, because enterprise diagram are also important to show how components applications will interact the enterprise common operating environments, including how base services exchange information through the NAP web service platform in the case where these applications are commercials, products from different vendors. And these interfaces can identify where compatibility must be present and as much as help to establish future requirements of integration. For the standards, technical standard documentation in the future views shows the international, national, local, and industry standards that changes to commercial and custom developed services. Systems and application must meet, and this include APIs and other interoperability or performance requirement. Meron tayong tinatawag na WSDL description of a web services in the UUDI registry are an example of the technical standards that need to be identified for future implementation in the service-oriented approach, or yung SOA na tinatawag natin, to the level of the EA3 framework. So under naman ito, meron tayong sa components, meron tayong data networks, telecommunication network, meron tayong video networks, cable plants, and security solutions. Under this, for the artifacts, we have network connectivity diagram, network inventory, capital equipment inventory. Wait. So again, under the EA artifacts, we have network connection diagram, network inventory, capital equipment inventory, building blueprints, network concentra diagram, cable plant diagram, and rack elevation diagram. So the technology infrastructure level of the EA framework documents components such as the enterprise voice data and video network, as well as the security solutions that protects them. In that, one of the goals of EA is to promote the integration of these networks into one seamless technology backbone, the future view of EA artifacts as this level documents changes to this infrastructure. So under network documentation, documentation of the enterprise IT networks in the future view show changes to the integrated voice, data, and video infrastructure components. So the enterprise local area network, no, mayroon tayong wide area network, and other networks are shown mainly in diagrams and technical specification documents. And this enterprise architecture artifact should focus on changes to cable plans, no, wireless telephone, in data wiring closets, no, network backbone hardware and software, servers, desktop, and portable computers, peripherals, and remote access resources. For the technical standard, no, IT network technical standards documentation in the future view shows changes to the national, international, and commercial standards, no, that are being used to guide changes to the enterprise technology backbone. And this include changes to standard that are reflected in the model of networks, no, including the OSI model and TCP/IP model. It also includes standard to for telephony, wireless communication, and remote video conferencing. When it comes to the security documentation, the future views of security documentation shows the expected changes and updates to security standards, plans, testing, and certification of its IT systems and network components of the enterprise architecture, as well as related security documentation for applications and databases. Under the configuration changes, the future view of the EACRS, no, consists of an archive of approved but yet to be implemented of EA change requests. And this EACRS documented the technical and operational impact, no, of changes to enterprise architecture components at all levels of the EA. No? For the hardware software list, no, the EA artifact in this area of future views is a list that documents anticipated changes in the quantity and type of IT hardware and software products that will be used in EA components throughout each of this level of the EA framework. No? So to summarize the discussion, no, in this discussion, we provided example of EA artifacts that document future views of EA components at all levels of the EA3 framework. So the use of future scenarios is one way to identify possible future operating environments and planning assumptions, which the future EA views can then be based on. So the same documentation techniques should be used in developing both current and future views of enterprise architecture components so that changes are easier to highlight and compare. So there are certain discussion actually, no, on how describe the purpose and compositions of an EA management plan. I think next presenter ang magdi-discuss niyan, which provide a description of the ongoing transitions between current and future views of an enterprise architecture. So I think that's it for this discussion. Okay. So yun lang naman yung focus ng ating ating lesson number 8, developing future architecture views, no? So this will be the feedback or the sample external discretionary and non-discretionary standard of the requirements. Okay, so I think that's it.